was going to start breaking up in a controlled implosion into a new mega bank of the world run by Goldman Sachs. Now the news from Time Magazine to Financial Times of London calls it Goldman Sachs conquers the world. And they're praising it, the genius of selling the country's derivatives, the genius of getting their personnel into every power position of regulatory control and executive control and legislative control and the bureaucracy. Europe is waiving all of its rights, the end of self-determination. And I hear CNBC, MSNBC, Bloomberg, their experts are praising, this month's Economist is praising the technocracy. The bankers are going to run everything now. They know how to do it. I mean, everything Lyndon LaRouche, Ron Paul, people from all over the political spectrum have pointed out. You notice anybody who's actually right about core issues is like off the reservation. The whole left-right thing is this tiny, sequestered, just totally limited false information. And Lyndon LaRouche joins us. I'm going to try to give you the floor, sir, to go over the whole geopolitical breakdown. You were getting into what's happening in Libya, where all of this is going, and the level of the precipice that we're on right now. I had the former head of Pakistani intelligence, Hamid Gul, on, and he said, yes, this could lead to a larger nuclear war. The Russians, as you said, are getting in defensive battle formation, saying do not attack Syria. Things are getting wild. Lyndon LaRouche, please continue.
Well, we've got to understand the general situation. First of all, we have a general breakdown of the entire international financial system. It's worse in the transatlantic region. It's less bad in the Asian region. Now, we talk about these bankers. They're bankrupt. We're in now in the worst hyperinflation in world history right now. These bankers don't have anything. If you tried to redeem any of the claims they think they have less than nothing. This is empty blank paper passed it for hyperinflation. This is being highly managed politically by doing all kinds of things to Europe and doing things to the United States. But this thing is not going to survive. These banks, every blasted one of them, is doomed. Now, there is a solution for this, and it's the only solution. It's Roosevelt's solution, Franklin Roosevelt's solution, Glass-Steagall. That does not solve the total problem. That eliminates the worst problem right now and makes it possible to undertake management of the problem. We would also have to create, since the Federal Reserve System no longer functions, it's hopelessly bankrupt. It could never be paid up. This thing will never be paid off. It's doomed. So therefore, we're going back to the old classify this thing as commercial paper that is not backed by anything. It's speculative paper. And therefore, just put it out on its own and let the people try to collect the money. There's nothing there. We have to save a part of our financial system, our commercial banking system. That's with Glass-Steagall. But that's not enough money to start a recovery. And we need now an actual physical recovery because our people are going to start dying massively. You look at the food supply for the United States going into the months ahead. Think about March and April at the present rate. We're going to have people dying of hunger and effects correlated to that in the United States. So therefore, we need an immediate reform. We understand, I do, and I guess some other people as well do. We go through Glass-Steagall. That could save the United States temporarily. It will also be a vehicle to save Western Europe temporarily. Because if we do this, they'll do it. But the other thing we have to do is we have to go back, since we don't have a Federal Reserve System anymore, it's bankrupt, it's hopelessly bankrupt. We therefore have to go back to Hamilton's original policy, which was U.S. constitutional policy. We go back to a credit system, not to a banking system, not to a money system. Under a credit system, the federal government can authorize a federal debt for specific purposes. Some of these things will be government projects, totally government projects, like the Tennessee Valley Authority was a project. NWAPA is a project of the same nature, but a much bigger one. You have transportation systems we need, all kinds of things we need, which the federal government is going to have to finance. And it has to be financed on good management. But then there are other things we can do. We can also get into long-term agreements with nations of the world. and we can create a fixed exchange system among nations which agree to the idea of Glass-Steagall as for their case.
So stop the global concerted devaluation. But shifting back, sir, the elites, the finance oligarchs and their tropism that you've talked so much about, they're not going to stop. They are preparing Dodger Stadium right now as a giant FEMA camp. Kevin Booth's getting video of it. They're under Homeland Security. They're arresting the occupiers nationwide as a giant simulation of political arrest. As you know, they passed the bill to secretly arrest U.S. citizens and have you just disappear. No one even knows where you go. Literal, the disappearances like the Khmer Rouge or something. I mean, am I right in saying they're going into hyperwarp and they've made the decision to go ahead and start wars and have a classic police state? And they're going forward. I mean, it's just come out that Henry Paulson, we already knew this, gave hedge funds inside information on Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae when he was Treasury Secretary. Well, of course he did. I mean, these are brazen criminals.
Well, you've got, look, it's very simple. We can deal with it. If the American people have the guts to do so, and the temperament and their direction is strong right now, as you probably know, that if you move this president, Obama, out of office, on the basis of his charge that he's insane, that's under the 25th Amendment, Section 4. He qualifies for expulsion from the presidency on the basis of that. Also, at the same time, you've got other things. He's also committed crimes against the Constitution. The Libya war was a crime. It was a violation of the Constitution. He's done many other things. Many of his so-called laws are violations of the Constitution. The attempt to prevent the Congress, the members of the Congress, from appealing what was a fraud against the government in this war in Libya is typical. What people have to have the guts to do, many people realize that Obama has to be out of office. What they're not realizing is he has to be out of office now. And there are two ways to get him out. One is to impeach him. But the other, the more immediate and more effective one, is the fact that he is clinically insane. And his insanity is of a very specific type, which is explicitly specified in the 25th Amendment, Section 4. All the evidence is there. Lift him out of the presidency, and I can guarantee you that a lot of things will change very quickly.
Sure, and of course he is spoiled milk. I mean, he politically now has a lower approval rating than Richard Nixon at the bottom, and of course Jimmy Carter. But the Corzines and the Robert Rubins and the people behind him, they don't care. They're going ahead with this homicidal looting of the system. So my question is, I agree with your solutions on that front. You're absolutely right. Great idea, sir. You called for it long before these crises even began. What I'm saying is they don't appear to be stopping. They don't care. It's like Corzine making a 40-to-1 bet on Euro bonds and then stealing his account holders' private money. It's admitted to be illegal. The head of the CFTC's invested with him and just says, we're going to allow it. I mean, they're entering a psycho land. Will they be allowed to just steal and destroy everything is my question. I mean, what does MF Global...
You got one vulnerability. It's come to one point. Right now, a few people with the guts in the world can sink the whole thing immediately, and there are solutions. But the key thing here now, one thing, if you do this, one thing, you're going to uncork everything and give a chance to the United States and other nations to survive. That one thing is get this president out of office now. If you don't get him out now, you are probably going to have thermonuclear war, from which very few people will survive. And so it's a choice. Have we got the guts to throw this bum out of office now when the evidence for it exists? Or are we going to be gutless and get into this kind of hell from which the human species itself might not exist? Do we have the guts to save the world?
Well, how do you get rid of Obama? Because that would cause kind of a breakup of things and allow new ideas to be injected. Because clearly he is narcissistic. Clearly he's constantly partying and in la-la land and playing golf 6 hours a day. I mean, you look at him, he does act like he's completely out of his mind.
And he's a British puppet. He's not an American. That election of his was a big fraud. The complications of how this was pulled, but mainly it was British money and British drug money, which was the big factor in flooding him into the presidency. Actually, on the basis of counting the votes in one way, on the Democratic side, he lost the Democratic nomination in fact. But because of a special feature, the way the thing was run, he was put in as the nominee for the election, a Democratic nominee. He shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Well, how does getting rid of Obama help? I mean, how does that help?
I can guarantee you personally that getting rid of Obama in this way, in this time, and you'll save the United States. If you don't do this, if you don't get Obama out now in this time, when the legal basis for doing so exists very clearly, then you're not going to save the United States.
I know, but explain to me the chain reaction. What is that vacuum if this puppet of the corrupt elements of Wall Street and finance capital, if he was removed for all the Fast and Furious, the illegal wars, you know, the mafia stuff, the list goes on and on.
Well, look at it. The American people hate this guy now. They hate him. And they hate him for good reasons. Huh? There's nothing protecting him. If you take out of his hands the powers of the president, at that instant, you're going to get a sudden change in the United States because the people in the United States are ready for it. The problem is many of them don't have the guts to do what they should do.
Okay, what do we do to get Obama out of there? Because then we get a Biden. I mean, let's say Obama, you know, for corruption charges, whatever, went bye-bye, what happens?
No, you have to remove Obama because he's a dictator. You remove the dictator, and you don't have to worry about these other problems so much. The American people, given the choice now, and the choice is take Obama out of the picture.
So you're saying it's that symbolic symbol of the puppet would-be dictator removed will send shockwaves through the structure. There won't be that executive fear factor. It'll be seen as a blow, a vote against the direction we're going, and will automatically steer energy towards other solutions.
It will also cause elements of the government and key parts of the government to take the action that's needed. And they have, with Obama out, not in the White House, not empowered in the White House, those other elements of our federal government, which I know will act in an appropriate way to end this nonsense. That does not mean we're going to have everything solved automatically, but we're going to have the power of the decision to decide what is done given back to the American people. And that will happen. The anger in this population, in the U.S. population, against what's being done to them, what has been done to them, they are ready to act. They're not mobilized in their mind as to know how to act. We have to put in their hands the means to act. And once they realize we've given them the means to act and made some suggestions of what the measures are that have to be dealt with in order to bring this about, I can guarantee you, if I weren't as old as I am, I'd be running for president on the basis of filling in the absent term of Obama.
And so you could inject real issues. Now, expanding on this, looking at what's currently happening, I know you have amazing sources in government, the military, you name it. That's been admitted by the Washington Post and others. I mean, again, former head of the National Security Council said you have the best private intelligence network out there. And I'm getting through my feelers the same things you're getting. And a lot of it, of course, months later manifests in the mainstream news. So there's major credibility here from my position, your position, our research, our history of giving people factual information. People can debate our analysis of the lines. I'm trying to give you the floor, sir, to go over the whole geopolitical breakdown. You were getting into what's happening in Libya, where all of this is going, and the level of the precipice that we're on right now. I had the former head of Pakistani intelligence, Hamid Gul, on, and he said, yes, this could lead to a larger nuclear war. The Russians, as you said, are getting in defensive battle formation, saying do not attack Syria. Things are getting wild. Lyndon LaRouche, please continue.
Well, we've got to understand the general situation. First of all, we have a general breakdown of the entire international financial system. It's worse in the transatlantic region. It's less bad in the Asian region. Now, we talk about these bankers. They're bankrupt. We're in now in the worst hyperinflation in world history right now. These bankers don't have anything. If you tried to redeem any of the claims they think they have less than nothing.
See, MSNBC, Bloomberg, their experts are praising, this month's Economist is praising the technocracy. The bankers are going to run everything now. They know how to do it. I mean, everything Lyndon LaRouche, Ron Paul, people from all over the political spectrum have pointed out. You notice anybody who's actually right about core issues is like off the reservation. The whole left-right thing is this tiny, sequestered, just totally limited false information. And Lyndon LaRouche...
This is empty blank paper passed it for hyperinflation. This is being highly managed politically by doing all kinds of things to Europe and doing things to the United States. But this thing is not going to survive. These banks, every blasted one of them, is doomed. Now, there is a solution for this, and it's the only solution. It's Roosevelt's solution, Franklin Roosevelt's solution, Glass-Steagall. That does not...
was going to start breaking up in a controlled implosion into a new mega bank of the world run by Goldman Sachs. Now the news from Time Magazine to Financial Times of London calls it Goldman Sachs conquers the world. And they're praising it, the genius of selling the country's derivatives, the genius of getting their personnel into every power position of regulatory control and executive control and legislative control and the bureaucracy. Europe is waiving all of its rights, the end of self-determination. And I hear CNBC